How we doing, guys? This is Walt Chiz here, sitting down with the creator of. Listen, I'm sorry. This is one of the greatest documentaries that I have seen in my lifetime. You know, you talk about your E60s and your 30 for 30s, but this right here is real in depth. We're sitting down with Matt Hamachek from who did the New England Patriots documentary. It's just only on Apple TV, right?
Yeah, Apple TV Plus. It's called The Dynasty.
The Dynasty, right? And I just tell them I'm on episode now where the Tom Brady just broke his leg after the perfect season. And man, listen, you guys go really in depth with the Patriots, starting back from Bledsoe to Parcells to how we got to Brady being everything. Talk to me about how this came about.
Well, I was working on a documentary called Tiger. That was about Tiger Woods. It was for HBO. This was out in 2021. And the guy that wrote the book that was sort of the inspiration for that series, a guy named Jeff Benedict, he was just wrapping up The Dynasty. And he asked me if I wanted to come on. I'm not. The truth is, I'm not really a Patriots fan.
That's shocking.
I grew up a Green Bay Packers fan. My dad grew up just outside of Green Bay, and anybody who's not anybody, but most people who are sports fans know you kind of are indoctrinated into loving your team by your parents for if you become like a full-blown fanatic, right? And so, you know, what always intrigued me about this story was the idea of getting to study greatness, and then I remember, you know, very, very soon into the project, I was able to interview a guy named Ernie Adams, who's the director of football research for the Patriots. And it was my first time sitting down there with him. And he said, every team at the beginning of every year, they all say they want to win the Super Bowl, but not all of them are willing to do what it takes to get there. And when he said that to me, that was one of those moments of like, oh, okay, maybe that's the thing that we're going to be trying to figure out here, right? What does it take to get there? And what does it take for these people to get there? And in an interesting way, this is sort of something that I've done I did it with Tiger. I've done it with other projects where you try to figure out what the question or the theme is, and then you use that to sort of decide everything that goes into like what you cover and all sorts of stuff like that. And because I didn't know much about the story, I got to talk to like 70 plus people, you know, players, coaches, front office execs, rivals like Strahan, Mike Martz, people like that, and really just listen and not come in, you know, with some preconceived notion of being like, oh yeah, I remember that this game, this was really important or anything like that. It was just asking questions, and then a lot of times, like whatever they told me or whatever was in the tens of thousands of hours of archive that we had access to, you know, that dictated the way the story unfolded.
So how does it feel being a Packers fan, having to write about the team that you beat in the Super Bowl?
Well, that was our one moment of glory in the story. For the most part, it's just it would be so funny because, you know, we had all this footage, and then the editors, we would talk, you know, story stuff, and then like, you know, we would talk big picture story stuff or what a scene was going to be about, things like that. And the editors would take it and they'd go, and I felt like every time they were showing like the Patriots' greatness, it would always be against like the safeties and the corners and stuff like that of the Packers. And I would just be like, man, why do we always have to look at the Packers getting burned by these guys? So it was tough, but it's all part of it.
Okay, so first off, how does it feel to be in the same room with Tom Brady? Let's talk about that.
Honestly. Mm-hmm. It was, I mean this in the best possible way, mm-hmm. but it was underwhelming in the sense that I expected him to come in with like an entourage of hair and makeup people and like a PR person, and somebody was going to tell me like what questions I couldn't like. Don't ask about Spygate.
You thought Tom Brady coming in to be a diva?
I thought I had no idea. He's like one of the biggest stars in the world, and the guy he drives himself up to the studio by himself, gets out of the car, sits down in the chair, no hair, no makeup. Just sits down and says, what do you guys want to know? And that was
I'm
it.
looking at him. His hair is all up like this in the interview.
Now, I'm not trying to say. See, now I'm very naive here. I was so funny. I had a great producer working with me on this. Many great producers, but Jenna Millman was one of the producers on it. And I told her after Tom left the interview, I said, it's just great. He doesn't have any hair or makeup on. He's like, and she was just like, no. He just did it at home. Like, you don't understand. Like, he still has his hair done and stuff like that. And of course, I just don't get it. Like, my mind just doesn't go to like those kind of things. So anyway, yeah, his hair must have been done by somebody, or he's just really good at doing his own hair. Who knows? But yeah,
hey, that's the TB12 look.
That's a TB12 look. He had the Brady sweatshirt on, which was great because it's just like now nobody's going to be confused as to who's talking because his name's always on his shirt. So
right,
we were set.
So Bill Belichick, how was that? How was that whole deal?
I think exactly what you see is exactly what it was like. It was there were times where, he's telling the story of calling up Randy Moss when Randy's in the club, trying to get him to come to the Patriots. And Randy thinks there's somebody else impersonating Bill Belichick. And, Bill's laughing about it, however many years later. And then there's other times where there's subjects like Spygate. When I asked him about that, he was just like, yeah, it's all in the past. Don't really want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about that.
And, and like, look, anybody who knows anything about the Patriots understands that like that's sort of the post-game press conference Bill Belichick, right? And so it's a mix. And I think that the thing that makes this so unique in a lot of ways, though, is that when he's up on the podium in his post-game press conferences, it's just him. It's different when there's all these other people talking around him. And I think you can, even when he doesn't say that much, you can get more out of it because of all the comments of everybody else that's around him. So it was a bit of both.
What player surprised you the most in the interview?
I'll give you a few. How about that?
Okay, let's do that.
I would say Dion Branch was definitely one of them because when I came into that interview, and you haven't gotten there yet, but you will, I was asking Dion all the things that you'd ask a wide receiver about football. Like he was a Super Bowl MVP, right? So I asked him about that and things like that. And then all of a sudden we had a producer named Vindy Anton who was not even in the studio that day. And I work off of a laptop when I do my interviews, so people can text me if the producers want me to, ask a question again, or they don't think that I did it the right way or whatever. They can always just tell me that. And one of the producers he texted me. He just goes, "Hey, I think Dion might know Aaron Hernandez or have hung out a lot with Aaron Hernandez." And so I asked him about it, and Dion is the most like gregarious, happy person, but I just remember like the look that came over his face when we started talking about Dion. It's actually or about Aaron, and it's one of the first things you see in that episode. And there were two things that came through from that. One was obviously that it still, I don't want to use the word haunts, but it still affects him to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is how much he cared and loved Aaron, and all of those people did. As we started to talk to more and more people about Aaron Hernandez, that was like the sort of duality of that story was, yeah, there's a tragedy, but there's also this guy that everybody really loved and was like, there were warning signs, but there was also this other side to him, and everybody kind of like, fell for I don't mean that in a deceptive way, but they were enamored by him and were kind of, they all loved him. So it was an interesting thing to see. So Dion was definitely one. Randy Moss is incredible.
Yeah.
And then in the latter, so I sort of think of it like, Ty Law also.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Ty Law, that guy he should be doing stand-up. He's so funny. And then in the latter years, meaning the second 3 Super Bowl years, I would say that like Amendola and Gronk were really, but also Matthew
I'm pretty
Slater.
sure. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Gronk likes to party. So
yeah, but there's also a different side to him. I think whether I don't know if it's that, I always wondered if he knows that there is, but he's like there have been multiple people who have told me that of all the players that have come through that place, Gronk is the most like fiscally responsible of all of them, that he lived off of his endorsement checks and saved all of his game checks for his entire career. And like, so I think there's another side to Gronk that he doesn't let us see.
Well, I just seen him at the Super Bowl, so I know he likes to party.
Yeah. Well, of course. Who doesn't?
Yeah. Going back to Dion Branch, man, he was to me, he was always a X and O's receivers. Like, there was nothing flashy with him, but he was just a guy that if you threw him the football, he was coming down with that football. He made it happen for the Patriots, especially for Tom Brady.
Don't you think though that there was an element of the Patriots? I mean, I know that there were times when they got flashier, like obviously that 07 season when they almost went undefeated. There was all those throws to Moss that were just so spectacular. They looked like a video game. But
oh man, I could tell you one. Here I'm in Dallas.
Yeah,
I'm right down the street from Texas, where Texas Stadium used to be. I can tell you one. They called it his foot stepped out of bounds, but I remember there was a play at Texas Stadium when they played on the undefeated year.
Yeah,
Randy Moss was on the other side of the field. He runs way on the other side. Tom Brady's on the other side of the field. Tom Brady launches the ball. The ball is waiting. It's still in the air. Randy Moss comes out of nowhere and grabs it, comes down with it in the end zone. But his foot, when he planted his foot was out of bounds. If he caught that pass, that would probably be the greatest touchdown in history.
Yeah. But it's interesting. What I was starting to, there were those years when stuff like that happened, but there were also years when you were describing Dion as not like the flashiest, and I think there was a feeling of a lot of years that Tom sort of fell into that category too. That's the way people perceived him, and I think that the way that I look at it now, having spent so much time on the project and getting to talk to these guys, is I don't think that they were anti-flash. But I think they were like the most fundamental, like they were the type of team that was always concerned about the fundamentals.
We were referred to the Patriots as the Spurs of the NFL.
Yeah.
We refer them as.
Yeah, but I think it worked really well though, right? Like there was he's never said this, but I always wanted, this one question I wish I'd asked him, which I wish I'd, whenever I interview people, I have about 10 pages of questions, right. and then I don't get to like most of them. But I'd love to know what Brady's take is on like no look passes, because I can imagine a world where he could say something like, why would I not look at a guy that I was throwing at? Because that's just like, it's just like part of it's just like part of the process for him. You know what I mean? And so they always seem obsessed with the idea of fundamentals and always like going back to like the basics. And that's what they always were so good at. And I think in a way their personalities were that way too. They just seemed at times like they felt like they kept us all at arm's length, but they were just always focused on ball. And that seemed to be the thing, even though they were always part of these like bigger stories, national stories and whatnot. Right. So, right. And credit to Coach Belichick for that, because he's the one who created the culture where there wasn't a lot of bulletin board material that was coming out of the Patriot place.
Well, early in Tom Brady's career, all the Super Bowls that they started to win, they gave Adam Vinatieri most of the success over Tom Brady to start out. Probably wasn't until the Eagles won. I think when they beat the Eagles, when everybody was like, okay, it wasn't Adam Vinatieri this time. This was actually Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I think also there was that. I remember Brewski has said in the past that he felt that the Carolina game was the one where he was like, oh, wow, Tom can really do it. So I think there were probably a couple different times, but certainly like the rest of the country woke up when 07 happened, right? That was the year, the undefeated season with Randy Moss was when everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different thing.
Right. And I was just sitting here looking. I always felt like Tom Brady's kryptonite when they was playing back at the time was the Miami Dolphins. It didn't matter how bad the Miami Dolphins was. The Miami Dolphins could come in and get a win on the Patriots. The Patriots could be red hot, and they'll play the Dolphins. The Dolphins just somehow just come up with a win on them.
That's what makes so here's the thing is that's what makes division rivals games just so much fun to watch, right? Doesn't matter who it is. Look, I'm a Packers fan. Every time we play the Bears, I don't care how loaded our team is compared to their roster. I'm trembling, and it's just like you just feel like that other team is always just has a chance no matter what. And so it's what makes football so great.
Not to get off topic here, but what you just said, I feel like the NFL for Thursday night football and even Monday night football, they should be rival games.
I love it. I love the idea.
Stop putting the Lions against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, that has nothing to do with each other. Make them rival games on Thursday and Monday night. I promise you the ratings will go up.
I mean, just think about if we could be guaranteed. I mean, I just think of like the AFC North. Like, if you could get, the Steelers and Ravens, or the Ravens and the Bengals, like that kind of stuff, where it's just like good physical football, and everybody would tune in, right?
Right. Just give us one rival. You don't have to be two. Just give us one rival game every week. I promise you those ratings will go up. Yeah. But getting back on it, you talked about the Aaron Hernandez part of the situation. I remember Gronkowski was getting interviewed. I can't remember who it was who was doing an interview at him at his house. And he was getting asked about him, and he like shut the interview like all the way down. Like, no, I'm not talking about it. I don't want to talk about it. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
Don't ask me that. And the dude asked him it again, and he got up and he was like, nah, I'm done. I'm out. I told you I don't want to talk about it.
Right, which was sort of a symptom, I think, in general. That's how the Patriots were for a really long time about almost everything, right? Like there was nothing that they certainly never talked about the things like Spygate and Deflategate and Hernandez. But I feel like for whatever reason, I think enough time had gone by. I think a lot of people were really willing to talk about all these things now.
Now we get closer to the end of it. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to cover pretty much the breakup between Brady and Bill Belichick. So I got to ask you, when that comes up, you were talking about the faces of Dion Branch. What are their modes and how are they feeling when that conversation comes up?
I think it's complicated. It depends on who you ask. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting to me is that at the very end of this thing, Tom talks about like the journey that they went on. And what he says is, it was perfect. It doesn't need to be more than that. Right. But by the time he says that, we basically spent 2, if not 3 episodes, basically going into all the things that led to it, the undoing. And I think the thing that you have to realize about this series is that we were really trying to go into all of these moments as if we were in the rooms when it was happening. So there isn't a lot of like 30,000 foot view, like, how do you feel now, having been away from this thing having been away from it for 7 years or something like that? This is the 2017 season is really, what was it like to be there at that moment in time? And what were the feelings then? And I think when you hear Tom say that, like, we get into all the drama of it, but there's also this place where I think they had so much success. I think when they look back on it, sometimes they sort of say, okay, it might have been tough, but how can you argue with what happened? And the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all part of it. And that's sort of how I felt in terms of going through and talking to all these people in this quest to understand the answer to how do you get there? How do you get to greatness? And I think the answer is it's all part of it. So like Bill, obviously, like in a player's detail, the episode that just aired last Friday, like there's these moments where Bill comes into the room and, Randy Moss says he decapitated Brady. He came in and Dante Stallworth talks about how like one of the first film sessions, he comes in and Belichick says, I could get Johnny fucking Foxborough from down the street to throw a better ball than this to Tom Brady. And it's like, they're all shocked, and I think that people detail about how this really affected Tom. But I don't think that you could say, like, well, that was harsh, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think you can separate the success without that culture. Like a coach that never treats anybody like they're above the team. There are no superstars, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's all related.
Well, that speaks volumes to what you're saying, because we were having a discussion the other day, some peers of mine, and even I talked to Sean Merriman a couple weeks ago. I was saying that coaching coaching is kind of a lost art now because you can't coach guys the way that you want to now because these guys make so much money, and it's just like, you know, if the player or the star player wants the coach gone, they make the organization says, yeah, he wants you gone, so we got to go with him.
Yeah, let me read you this line. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. This is a quote by Tom Landry.
Okay.
The job of a football coach is to make men do what they don't want to do in order to achieve what they've always wanted to be.
Wow.
Now, again, I think you're right. I think it's harder to coach that style of coaching now, right? Because times have just changed. Like, people have changed also. But I really firmly believe that the success that they had at the Patriots would not have existed without and would not have sustained for as long as it did without Coach Belichick's style. Even if there were times when the people that were there, you know, couldn't take it anymore, whatever you want to call it, right? I just think it's part of it. And I think that, you know, both things can be true at the same time. It can be that, like, you know, maybe it was too hard for people at times. It grew old eventually, but, you know, it also is the reason for a lot of success. And sometimes people ask, like, when people who watch will come to me and they'll say, well, you know, don't you think Bill should have changed? And I always sort of think, like, nah, I don't get that. Like, why change something that's working? Like, one of the things that's worked for so long is he never let Tom Brady become a superstar, and everybody saw that. And I can understand some people sort of saying, like, well, yeah, but what if he just changes and then, like, they get to go and get one more Super Bowl? And it's like, well, you know, what if he had changed a few years too early and they don't get the last one?
Did you sense there was any kind of animosity between when you would talk to Brady and when you would talk to Bill at certain points? Do you feel like, you know, like, well, he's still kind of angry about it, or he feels this way?
I don't know, because we didn't get into the how do you feel now thing, right? I will say this. There were only there were like 3 or 4 times when Brady got emotional in a positive way, meaning how much he cares for people, emotional. And Bill was at least 50% of those, if not more. So even if at the time there was feelings, I feel, you know, there were disagreements, and, like, people detail, you know, the fact that at a certain point they really weren't even talking to each other.
Right.
But, you know, there's one of the, you know, having that perspective changes things. Maybe even going to another team changes that, right?
Right, because you see Brady goes to Tampa and wins a Super Bowl, and then the Patriots kind of like weren't even close or even making the playoffs. And then the first thing everybody said was, "Oh, well, it was Tom Brady. It was never Bill Belichick."
I think that's and I asked somebody that. I asked Scott Pioli that, who is the vice president of player personnel, and you know what he says? He goes, "It's disrespectful."
Yeah,
either answer is disrespectful, because it ignores their contributions, but it ignores all the other players that have come through that team that all sacrificed their own personal, you know, goals in order to accomplish what they all set out to accomplish. And there are so many people, coaches, players, people that worked in front offices, all that kind of stuff that all did what it took to get there every single year. And obviously it's not always pretty, but I just can't see. I know the Chiefs are getting there, but it's really hard to do that in this day and age, especially with salary cap, with free agency, but also just with the scrutiny of social media and everything else. I just, you know, it probably will happen at some point, but it's hard for me to imagine it looking like the way that it did with the Patriots.
So now, like I said, I'm here in Dallas. You know, my guy Jerry Jones. Next to Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft would be the next guy that I like. That as far as owner wise, that I would say I would root for. What was it like interviewing him? What's he like? I feel like
it's a great question. So he's a fascinating person to sit across from, especially like when we got into the details of like how he got the stadium and stuff like that. You understand that 2 things. He's a funny guy. I think Bill's probably the same way, from what a lot of people say. These guys all are really funny, but you also realize how they found success.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of one of those classic stories of like, you don't become a billionaire without knowing how to throw some elbows. Right. And so you understand that the guy, yeah, he may be in his 80s, but he's still got it and he knows how to get what he needs. And it's impressive to sit across from him. So it's a good question. I mean, endlessly fascinating to talk to all of these guys. I mean, just think about what I had the opportunity to do while making this thing, like the people and the success that they've accomplished, and just being able to sit across from them and ask them questions about like how they obtained it, how they kept it, and how they kept one of the most competitive leagues, at bay for so long. Pretty remarkable.
I'm fascinated by him now because he doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, and he doesn't have Bill Belichick anymore. And now I'm fascinated to see like what's next for him. Like, where does he go? Does he say, you know what? Does he do like Bob Myers in the NBA and say, yep, you know what? I'm bowing out gracefully. I want to get out. You don't get that. You didn't get that sense from him. You feel like he's ready to rev up again.
In the sense that I have no idea, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but that does not seem like somebody who's slowing down even for a heartbeat. You know what I mean? But that's what makes I'm sure it's the same thing with Jerry over there, right? Like I know nothing about him, but you'd imagine that he's not sitting around thinking like, oh man, I just want to go lay on the beach for 6 months out of the year, right?
Never.
So
we would never do that.
That the answer of how do you obtain success, you have to have a certain mentality. And I think like you look at Bill and you look at Tom, you look at Robert, you look at everybody that came through that place. They were all workers. Like that's the thing that unites them, is they all were willing to do whatever it took to get back to the Lombardi Trophy.
It's Gerard Mayo is the new coach over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the Patriots.
Yep.
Right, he's the new coach. So they hired a former player, and I'm just sitting there like, man, you went through decades where you had this lightning in a bottle, and now it's over, and it's like, well, where do we think that Robert Kraft can create the same lightning in a bottle again? Can you get lightning in a bottle twice? Lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice.
Well, here's the thing that's the thing here. So the other thing that the story is about, and I'm not trying to suggest that I think it's going to be the same thing, but one of the things that I kept finding interesting about this is every time somebody would doubt them, Tom and Bill especially, there was all these different times where people thought that Coach Belichick was being an idiot for going with Tom Brady over Drew Bledsoe, that Tom Brady was, there's the Max Kellerman, Tom Brady's about to fall off of a cliff, thing. Everybody was always trying to write the obituary of every decision in the Patriots in general. And just when that happened, or just when the world was coming down on them for something like Spygate or Deflategate, sometimes their best work was when their backs were up against the wall and everybody was doubting them. And I'm not trying to say that that's going to happen this time, but I one thing I've learned, and I learned this making Tiger as well, never to be in the business of saying something's over, it's not going to happen again with certain people, because there are some people that just have it in them to will something into existence. So we'll see.
Real quick before I let you go, what did you take from this documentary? What did you learn that you didn't know coming into this documentary? What did you get?
I think in the end, yes, it's a story about football because it's a story about a football team. But the thing that I kept coming back to in this quest to understand sort of the what does it take thing is it is a story about people and their interactions with each other and finding ways to motivate themselves and motivate each other year after year after year. When you think about it, these guys played deep into January almost every single year, right? They played so many more games than anybody else played, yet somehow every year, even after a crushing loss like the one to the Giants in 2007, they come back in ready to go.
Well, not to say both of them. They lost 3. They lost 2 to the Giants and 1 to the Eagles, right?
And I mean, those were, I would say, all of those are crushing losses. They also dealt out some pretty crushing losses too, in terms of, when you think about what that team did to the Seahawks with the interception of Malcolm Butler's interception, right? Like after I don't think there's a lot of people I have heard say that team never really bounced back from that, right? And then when you think about the Falcons and the 28-3 comeback, I mean, I don't know how you ever come back from those things. But that, again, here's the thing is, I don't know if those teams did. I'm not an expert on football, so this is just a fan talking. But the Patriots kept coming back, no matter what they had happen to them, no matter what was going on within the team. And again, this keeps coming back to culture to me, right? It's like, and when I say culture, I don't just put that on Coach Belichick. I think it's Tom Brady's willingness to fit into that culture. I think it comes from the top, but I think it comes from every other player who just bought in and said, like, we're gonna. And I think part of it is it's easy to buy into it, no matter how tough it is, because they had those people, they had those key pieces, right? If you have Coach Belichick coaching and you have Tom Brady playing at quarterback, every year you have a better chance probably than any other team in the league of getting into the Super Bowl, at least getting there, right? And so there was always this willingness to buy in and deal with whatever the if it was hard to be coached there, if it was difficult, if it wasn't fun. Ernie Adams, the director of football research, says, well, our fun, frankly, was putting our fingerprints on the Lombardi Trophy at the end of every season. That's our fun.
Yeah, they were just showing a draft with Ernie Adams, and when he got McCourty, Gronkowski, and Aaron Hernandez.
It's a hell of a draft.
Right. So I'm going to ask you this question. They talk about the Cowboys, they talk about the Steelers. They never really bring up the Patriots as being one of the. Is the Patriots one? They should be up there in the top. They should be up there in the conversation for one of the greatest dynasties.
Oh, they are the greatest dynasty. Period. There's no question. I mean,
right? Because they said the Steelers won this many, the Cowboys won that many, but I think
they won more, and they did it. Look, I'm not even a Patriots fan, so I don't have a dog in this fight at all. But I'll just say it like, no, there's no comparison. It is the Patriots, and they did it during free agency and all the cap space stuff. They did it under the scrutiny of multiple scandals when everybody was trying to sort of tear them down. And, it's just, there isn't anything else out there like them. And they never, until the very, very end, after 20 years, they never let anything that was going on internally get in their way. Whereas, you talk about the Cowboys dynasty, Jimmy Johnson leaving and all that stuff, right? Like there's in some of these other times, there's been erosion from within when there might have been more Super Bowls on the, available and stuff like that. So I just don't think there's any comparison to anybody else but the Patriots. And I can tell you, I was not a fan and don't really consider myself a fan of the team. But I think when you really look at them, you have to just be in awe of what they've accomplished.
Yes, you do. All right. Well, thanks, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm still sitting here watching. I've been watching it all morning. I've watched it a couple weeks ago. Now, before I let you go, can you tell the people how they can find the documentary?
Yeah,
where they can find everything.
It's on Apple TV Plus, and it will be up there for a very long time. And the last 2 episodes dropped this Friday, episodes 9 and 10. But the other thing is we've been doing them 2 at a time up until now. But now, if you're the type of person who likes to binge, all 10 are going to be up by Friday morning, and so you can binge all 10 if you haven't seen the series.
Do you have anything else you're working on recently that you want to promote or anything? You got anything going on?
Honestly, I was away from my family for so long while I was making this thing, interviewing people all over the country. So I'm trying to spend some time with my family right now. We're going to go on spring break and enjoy some time off after everything, and it'll be nice. And
so basically, we'll see you next season when football season starts.
Oh yeah, I don't know, man. I just look. Here's the most interesting thing about this. I talk to people about football and/or watched football every single day for 2.5 years, and I remember when the past football season started. My wife said, "You're not going to sit and watch the games. You've got to be so sick of this." And I was just like, "No, that's totally wrong. I can't wait." And I still devour during the regular season. I'm like everybody else, sitting on the Red Zone channel watching for 8 hours. And you got to just be a Red Zone guy at this point, right? You can't just watch the full games anymore. No, I totally can. Nothing makes me happier. I mean, if it's Packers, I'll watch the full game. Right. But and I'll watch every second. I still sit there like everybody else does, watching on Twitter, I'll get the announcement that Coach LaFleur is having a press conference, and I'll sit there like everybody else watching. And it's a lot easier to watch after they win than when they've lost. And, I know you're down there in Dallas, but it's Packers still have Cowboys number after all these years.
Trust me. I know we just found out this past January.
Yeah, that was, from my perspective, that was a great game. And Jordan Love, and just think about how demoralizing, and I know I'm just turning into a fan now, but how demoralizing it is for the Bears and for everybody else in that division to think, we thought we was done with Favre, but then we have to have Rodgers, and now there's a chance they've got Love, and it's just going to be another 20 years of this.
Talk about having to be in the same room with this guy at the Super Bowl, and he walks by and you like, that's the guy who ruined my Cowboys season. And I'm in a room with him. I was getting ready to say, as far as the Cowboys go, well, I do pre-halftime and post-game show for the Cowboys here in Dallas on my own network, but so I can sympathize. So when the Cowboys are on, I'm watching that game. But any other thing, unless it's like Sunday night or Monday Night Football, I'm red zone.
Oh, it's the best. There's no, and it's the best. I used to think that Sunday Ticket was the best thing possible, but once you discover red zone, especially if you play fantasy or any of that other stuff, it doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I'm that way because I think it was Jerry Jones said, defense wins Super Bowl, but offense puts butts in seats.
That's right.
So I'm watching. I'm a highlights guy. I like big plays. So I'm always watching the games just for big plays. So red zone is
it's great. Okay, and my favorite is when they accidentally, when it goes to commercial by accident, and then Hansen or whatever the guy's name is comes in and he's like, ladies, I am so sorry for the fact that it's the best. It's almost like I enjoy them getting caught doing it more than anything else, just so I can see him apologize for it. And then if they miss one of the touchdowns or something like that, they also have to apologize. It's great. The whole thing is awesome.
They've got lightning in the bottle with red zone. I think red zone is going to be around for forever.
Oh yeah. I hope so.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Matt. Pleasure. Go spend time with your family.
Sounds good.
And kick your feet up, because this is a damn good documentary, man. I'm telling you, man. From the time you turn it on, you're not gonna want to stop, because I like the little cliffhangers you guys leave at the end too. This is getting ready to happen. Like I was just watching a few seconds ago when you guys were going into the Aaron Hernandez story, and it's like, oh man, here it comes. And then the documentary starts and it goes, well, we're gonna start 3 years up, but we're gonna lead you up to this, how we get to this point. That's what's great. That's how you know you're a great documenter, when you can tell a story like that. We can tease you with it, but we're not gonna give it to you right away. We're gonna take you down the pipeline to get you there, and we're gonna hook you in to where you just say, oh man, I gotta see this, I gotta see more. Whenever you can get some people watching, they say, I gotta see more. That's when you know you got something.
I appreciate it. But look, as well as anybody does that this, much like football, making something like this is a team sport. And I had about 50 plus people working with me on this thing, and everybody worked their butts off. And that's the reason the product is as good as it is. And those cliffhangers in particular are things that we really worked on, because we knew, everybody's got a short attention span. Everybody's got a phone, and these the videos on the phones are only like 10, 15 seconds long, and then people stop paying attention. So how do you get people to pay attention for, hours and hours and hours? So we worked really, really hard on it. And so I appreciate you saying that.
So one more time, the Dynasty documentary, it goes over the New England Patriots from, was that like
2001 through 2020.
Go watch this documentary. It's on Apple TV Plus. Go watch it. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is a really good documentary. They get real detail, in depth of everything, stuff, questions you had from behind the scenes. You get answers with this documentary. Go check it out.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Talk to you soon.
You too.